Europe is swallowing itself. Artillery thunders, flags burn, and headlines scream. One man reads them, nods once, and looks south, into a white space on the map that eats plans for breakfast. Ernest Shackleton doesn't chase war. He chases the place that doesn't care who wins one. He's not bred for drawing rooms or medals. Born in 1874 to a respectable, not rich Irish family, he bolts from school at 16 and signs on to the Merchant Navy. That's where he learns the useful things: how to read a sky, how to ride out a sea that wants you dead, how to command men in spaces that smell like coal, salt, and fear. Books do their work too, tales of far ice and question marks, but his education is weather and steel. By his late 20s, he's caught the polar fever, the heroic age addiction that swaps wages for frostbite and calls it profit. The South Pole falls in 1911. Amundsen sticks a flag in it and smiles thinly. Scott dies chasing the same ghost. Shackleton has come close before on the Nimrod expedition, turning back because survival pays better than graves. So he raises the stakes. Don't just touch the pole, cross the entire Antarctic continent from sea to sea. A clean line across a blank page. Simple to say, lunacy to try. Imagine the pitch. We'll sail to the world's edge, punch through a graveyard of ice, land on a coast that moves, march across 1,000 miles of cold traps and crevasses, and emerge alive on the far side. We'll bring dogs, also cameras. The era loves audacity. Sponsors do too, when the seller has eyes like searchlights and a voice that turns obstacles into details. Shackleton's charisma is the winch that hauls money out of thin air. Private donors, government grants, the sale of film rights, anything that turns a dream into a deck under boots. The plan is two-pronged and neat on paper. Ship 1, Endurance, carries Shackleton and the crossing party into the Weddell Sea to land near Vassal Bay, then drive inland with sledges and dogs. Ship 2, Aurora, sails to the Ross Sea on the opposite side, laying depots all the way toward the pole so the transcontinental team can eat their way home. Two halves of a bridge no one's ever built. By endurance we conquer, the family motto says. Foreshadowing or a dare, take your pick. Now the cast. Frank Wilde, First Lieutenant Shackleton's shadow and counterweight, a quiet man who can make a messy order sound like a favor. Frank Worsley, New Zealander, navigator, a human sextant with an instinct for ice that borders on witchcraft. Tom Crean, Irish, cheerful and unbreakable, the sort of sailor who still has a joke in his pocket when the pocket's frozen shut. Charles Green, the cook who makes miracles from tins. Leonard Hussey, meteorologist and banjo morale unit. James Wordy, geologist, eyes always on the rocks even when the rocks are moving. Frank Hurley, Australian photographer who climbs anything to frame everything. His plates will outlive them all. Plus 69 Canadian sled dogs, a carpenter the crew calls Chippy, and one stowaway who thinks adventure is worth a scolding. There's also a cat, Mrs. Chippy. She belongs to the carpenter, struts the deck like she owns the ship and will be treated like royalty by men about to sleep in their boots. War erupts as they sail. Shackleton offers to stand down. The Admiralty tells him to proceed. Some kinds of madness are better spent where bullets can't reach. Endurance slips down the Thames in August. Black smoke against grey sky, a wooden heart in a steel age. The crew watches the city shrink, then the coast, then everything human until only wind has a voice. They thread the Atlantic, take on supplies in Buenos Aires, coal, food, rope, oil, optimism. That's where the stowaway Perce Blackborough is discovered. Shackleton looks at the kid who hid in a locker to chase a story and sees something useful. Nerve. He makes him a steward. The message is simple. If you're on board, you work. If you work, you belong. It's leadership by gravity, tough, fair, and inescapable. South Georgia is the last outpost before the White. Whaling stations squat under jagged mountains that scratch the sky. The place smells like oil and iron and whales. The Norwegians squint into the south and say the year's ice is early, heavy, vicious. The Weddell Sea, they remind anyone listening, is a machine that crushes ships into splinters and forgets them. Shackleton listens. Shackleton goes anyway. Confidence is fuel and he's topped off. December 5th, 1914. Endurance leaves Grytviken for the Weddell Sea. The first days are pure cinema. Light you can taste, bergs like cathedrals, calm water wearing a halo. Hurley shoots as if the world might vanish when he blinks. The crew settles into the rhythm of a ship that's part laboratory, part kennel, part barracks. Scientists lower instruments, sailors nurse steam, Dog handlers drill the teams until paws and men understand each other. At night they read. Shackleton believes a fed mind is harder to break than a fed belly, so the library's thick with novels, poetry and encyclopedias. He reads aloud sometimes as if words can warm fingers. Then the postcard folds itself into a fist. Pack ice gathers. The lanes of open water, leads as narrow and wink out. Getting forward becomes an argument with a moving floor. The hull starts talking. Little pops, then long wooden groans like a church door in a storm. Worsley stands on the bridge, scanning for the next gamble, steering through a maze that moves while you're in it. The Weddell current spins clockwise, a slow carousel that herds ice into places you'd rather not be. Endurance rams, reverses rams again. Men take to the flows with picks and lines, turning geography into a job. Here's the first micro hook for your watcher. The ship isn't stuck yet, but you can hear the word forming. Days smear into a calendar made of weather. The midnight sun circles without setting, playing tricks on sleep and temper. The men start naming the icebergs, Old Growler, the castle, because names turn monsters into neighbors. Shackleton rides the mood like a helmsman. If it dips, he orders football on the ice, lectures in the mess, concerts with Hussey's banjo. Humor becomes policy. Discipline, too, clean quarters, hot meals, no sulking. He doesn't ask for cheers. He arranges reasons to give them. By mid-January, the Weddell has them where it wants them. The ship is beset, locked in by ice that is not a surface but a continent pretending to be a sea. Progress is drift now, and drift answers to wind and current, not desire. The dream of a February landing at Vassal Bay starts to feel like a postcard from someone else's trip. Pressure ridges lift and crack like slow-motion earthquakes. You learn to hear danger. It sounds like distant artillery. One night a floe scrapes endurance and leaves a long, ugly bruise. The carpenter and his crew go to work, wood on wood, sealing the ship against a place that hates edges. Hurley climbs the mast in a harness to catch it all. Ant people on a chessboard of white, an ink-black ship cutting a dark streak through a pale world. The images aren't art now. They're insurance, proof to the future that this happened. Second microhook. A cameraman risking the fall because memory might be the only salvageable cargo. Isolation sharpens. Radios can't squeeze signals this far. The nearest living stranger is 1,000 miles away, and that's if you guess right. Some men write diaries. Some repair boots until the leather holds a shape like a story. Some stare at the band of sun rolling around the horizon and try to remember what night feels like. The dogs howl. Mrs. Chippy purrs. The stove fights back the cold one mug at a time. Every system, from morale to metabolism, turns into a ledger. Deposits, hot tea, clean socks, a bad joke well told. Withdrawals, fear, cold, the slow bleed of momentum. Here's the part where the promise of triumph starts curdling into the promise of something better. A test. Shackleton's authority tightens without drama. He moves among the men, calibrating, noticing who needs a job, who needs a word, who needs a wall to lean on for exactly 60 seconds. He listens more than he talks. When he talks, it's short, definite, and never about doom. If a plan dies at breakfast, he has another by lunch. You lead people in the ice by stealing excuses from despair. The map they believed in is going soft around the edges. The plan remains elegant on paper and impossible on ice. 2 ships, 10,000 details, and 1 uninvited partner. The Weddell Sea, which plays by rules that don't print well. That's your third hook. Nature is not the villain because villains can be negotiated with. Nature is the setting that gets a vote. The date clicks forward like a slow metronome. February approaches. The ice locks harder. Somewhere ahead, Vassal Bay waits like a rumor. Behind them, a world tearing itself apart with shells and wires. Here a wooden ship listens to a frozen ocean thinking out loud. The question that floats in every breath. Do we force our way to the goal or change the goal and save the men? Hold that thought. You already know the answer history loves. But first, the sound of wood under pressure. The groan that doesn't stop when you want it to. Endurance, meet endurance. February sharpens its teeth. The Endurance no longer sails. It waits locked into a shifting vice that grows tighter each week. The Weddell Sea isn't a body of water anymore. It's a trap with walls that grind and sigh like something alive. What was supposed to be a gateway has become a prison. The routine saves them, at least for a while. Shackleton enforces rhythm the way a general enforces discipline. Meals on time, decks cleaned, dogs exercised, science carried out. If you can predict the day, you can outlast the night. Even if the night is months long and never fully dark, men haul instruments, scribble weather logs, run the dogs across white plains until the animals pant steam into the endless daylight. Hurley risks his life climbing rigging sheathed in frost, cameras clutched like relics, to capture images of a ship marooned in glass. The groans from the hull turn into conversation. Timber pops like rifle cracks, and the men stop mid-task listening. Pressure ridges heave upward in slow explosions. Slabs taller than a man rear out of nowhere. The ship shudders when they shift, and suddenly every bunk, every nail feels temporary. They call it beset, but the word is too polite. The Endurance isn't surrounded. It's swallowed. Morale is a fire Shackleton refuses to let go out. He orders football games on the ice, races between dog teams, even a mock trial where the accused is some unlucky soul charged with stealing imaginary bacon. Laughter ricochets across the floes, part defiance, part medicine. At night, Hussey plucks his banjo, a ridiculous sound in the frozen void, but one that keeps frostbite from spreading into the mind. Shackleton's genius isn't just in decisions, it's in timing. He knows exactly when to distract, when to reassure, and when to let silence work. Still, the horizon keeps reminding them. The drift isn't toward land. It's away. The current is dragging Endurance north, a passenger in a carousel they can't leave. The dream of Vassal Bay grows faint, a goal receding behind invisible glass. Some mutter in frustration, but the leader walks among them at night, speaking quietly, cutting off complaints before they harden. His law is simple, unity or death. By May, the Antarctic winter is undeniable. The sun disappears, temperatures plunge, the ship groans louder. Frost tightens its grip like a slow fist. Men bundle into furs and boots so stiff, they shuffle like caricatures. Lanterns burn whale oil through the endless dark, filling the air with smoke. Meals shrink. Hunting keeps the worst away, but every bite is rationed with arithmetic. Sleep comes in bursts, punctured by the distant thunder of shifting ice. Shackleton calls for patience. The ice may release them in spring, he says. They may yet sail free. The crew believes because he does, or at least pretends well enough. That's leadership in a coffin of ice. Confidence is as important as food. Then comes the first real attack. The pressure surges, the floes buckle, and the Endurance lurches as though struck broadside. Men rush topside into the dim light, watching walls of ice grind against the hull. Timbers bend. The air fills with noises no ship should make. They brace for splinters, for water, for the order they fear is coming. For now the Endurance holds, but everyone hears it, the slow, deliberate cracking of a noose being drawn tighter. The ship isn't merely trapped anymore, it's being hunted. October 27, 1915. The noise builds until no one mistakes it for anything else. Splintering, booming, a deep-throated growl that runs through the hull into bone. Shackleton calls it. The words the men have dreaded, rehearsed in silence, finally come out sharp. Abandon ship. They don't panic. They move. Training and discipline take over. Every man knows what matters: food, lifeboats, instruments, fuel. Hurley dives into his darkroom, sorting glass plates like a surgeon under fire. Shackleton allows him to keep only a handful. The rest must be smashed on the ice, so no one risks their life saving them later. Hurley swings his axe and destroys his own art, keeping just a core of history. Around him, men lash sledges, haul crates, and fight frostbite with speed. They set up on the floe itself. Ocean camp. Canvas tents pitched on a floor that groans under them. Blubber stoves choking smoke. Meals rationed like bullets. Everything tastes of seal and penguin. Greasy, metallic, sustaining. They try to joke about it, but the math is clear. There are 28 mouths and only so much flesh to go around. Hunting becomes the most important job on the ice. The nights are filled with small things that feel enormous. The banjo officially declared vital equipment. The dogs, barking and straining, part labor force, part morale unit. Mrs. Chippy perched on a shoulder, a flicker of home in a place where home is impossible. Even in this absurd outpost, men name the floes, nickname the ridges, keep up the rituals of civilization. It's survival, disguised as routine. Then come the choices that scrape the soul. The dogs can't all be fed. One by one, weaker teams are shot. The men do it with set jaws, then turn away fast. Shackleton takes the blame himself whenever he can. He knows leadership sometimes means dirtying your own hands so others don't fracture under the weight. Command isn't about shouting, it's about steering moods like a ship through ice. Shackleton senses grumbling, cuts it off with private talks, jokes, or sudden new duties. When men clash, he reshuffles tents until they don't. He enforces optimism the way he enforced sail discipline, relentlessly, but not cruelly. If someone says we're finished, he shuts it down instantly. Hope is rationed like food, strictly controlled, never wasted. Weeks pass. The endurance is still visible, half crushed, leaning at angles no ship should. She groans, cracks, then settles lower. By November, she slips under, swallowed by the sea. The men stand silent, caps off, watching the last splinters vanish. Their floating fortress, their prison, their only link to civilization, gone. All that remains is ice, dogs, tents, and 3 lifeboats dragged onto the floe. They shift to a new site, Patience Camp. The name says everything. Days blur into waiting, hunting, and listening. The floe itself begins to betray them, shrinking, splitting, riddled with black pools of open water. They sleep on something that dissolves beneath them, waking to gunshot cracks that open new seams across camp. The calendar turns into drift charts. They are moving north, yes, but not by choice, not by design. They are passengers on a disintegrating raft. Every man feels it. The bottom is falling away. The ice has given them shelter, but it will not last. The lifeboats that sit on the floe silent for months are no longer spare gear. They are destiny, and each man knows without anyone saying it out loud that soon they'll be trading one death trap for another. The ocean is waiting. April 1916. The ice that has held them prisoner begins to crack apart for good. Tents tremble, floes split under boots, and black water spreads like veins. Shackleton knows the waiting game is over. The only way now is water, into the open boats. 3 lifeboats are readied, the James Caird, the Dudley Docker, and the Stancomb Wills. They are overloaded with men. Food, seal meat, and dreams too fragile to mention aloud. Launching is chaos. Floe edges breaking, gear tumbling, dogs barking their last. Oars bite at slush. Men curse through frozen beards, waves slap hard enough to sting. It is no longer about distance. It's about surviving the next hour, the next wave, the next decision. The ocean doesn't welcome them. It tries to roll them under, drown them in spray, freeze them solid where they sit. The boats are small, the seas are endless. Salt water soaks everything, including the men, turning clothes into armor that weighs more each mile. Hands blister, lips crack, voices rasp from thirst. Navigation is desperate. Worsley squints through fog, steering by instinct as much as stars. Sometimes the boats drift apart, nearly lost to each other in mist and chaos, only to find one another again by shouting into the gale. And yet, there is land ahead. Elephant Island. It rises from the horizon like a jagged promise, ugly, hostile, but solid. The first sight of it pulls the men through their last ounces of strength. After nearly 500 days adrift on ice and water, their boots hit rock. Some fall to their knees, kissing the stones. Others collapse in exhaustion, too spent to celebrate. They are alive, barely. The island is no paradise. The beach is a strip of misery, storm-lashed, narrow, battered by waves. The men haul the boats ashore, flipping them into makeshift shelters. Seal blubber fuels fires that belch black smoke, staining faces but keeping hands from freezing off. Penguins stumble into camp and are slaughtered for food. Hunger doesn't leave. It just pauses between kills. They know Elephant Island offers no rescue. No ship passes here. No shipping lane cuts this far south. This is a cul-de-sac at the edge of the world. Shackleton understands the math. Survival requires help. Hand help lives across the most violent stretch of ocean on Earth. South Georgia is nearly 800 miles away, a line of hope across a sea that eats ships whole. The boats they have are toys, but one of them, the James Caird, can be turned into a weapon. The plan is reckless, insane, the kind that history later calls genius. A handful of men will sail the Caird across the Southern Ocean, find South Georgia, and bring back rescue. The rest will wait here on Elephant Island, with nothing but faith that Shackleton will keep his word. The men look at him, at the Caird, at the black horizon. He doesn't flinch. He says it simply, we'll go. We'll come back. And just like that, the next gamble is set. The James Caird is pulled onto the stones, a boat barely longer than a room, destined to face an ocean designed to kill ships 10 times her size. McNish, the carpenter, works a miracle. He raises her sides with planks and sledge runners, seals seams with lamp wick and oil paint, stretches canvas for a deck. What was once a lifeboat becomes a coffin-shaped vessel, armed only with nerve. Shackleton inspects it, nods once. It will have to do. 6 men climb aboard. Shackleton, Worsley, Crean, McNish, Vincent, McCarthy. 22 others stand on the beach, faces dark with blubber smoke waving as the Caird shoves off. Shackleton doesn't let them see doubt. He promises he'll return. They believe him because they must. The voyage begins with gales. The Southern Ocean doesn't test them, it assaults them. Walls of water rear 30-40 feet high. Spray freezes the moment it lands, coating faces, rigging, sails, turning men into statues of ice. They take turns bailing, rowing, steering, never dry, never warm. Salt water soaks the floor, blisters skin, rots flesh. McNish and Vincent weaken fast, reduced to shadows hunched in the bilge. McCarthy, young and stubborn, never stops hauling. Crean moves like a machine, quiet, tireless. Shackleton hovers between them all, measuring strength, deciding when to press and when to rest. Worsley is their lifeline, squinting through slits of sky, sextant in hand, catching seconds of sun to plot their position. One mistake, one miscalculation, and they'll sail into emptiness forever. Days stretch into weeks. The boat is a coffin tossed by titans. Men tie themselves with ropes to keep from being washed overboard. Shackleton orders routine. Hot milk from melted ice, meager rations of biscuit. Watches change like clockwork. Order is survival. Chaos means death. Then land. A smear of white and green through sleet. South Georgia. They've crossed 800 miles of nightmare. The Caird staggers into King Haakon Bay, her seams splitting, her crew nearly broken. The men crawl ashore, kiss stones, collapse. The boat has done its work. She will sail no more, but they are on the wrong side. The whaling stations lie across the spine of South Georgia, a mountain range unmapped, unclimbed, iced over and vicious. 3 men are too weak to attempt it. They stay behind with McNish and Vincent. Shackleton, Crean and Worsley ready themselves for the last throw of the dice. With 50 feet of rope, a carpenter's adze and no map, they set out. 36 hours without rest, over glaciers, ridges and hidden crevasses. The wind howls, the snow blinds, and the mountains rise like barricades. They slide down slopes on their bellies, praying not to vanish into unseen cracks. Hunger gnaws, exhaustion hammers, but they do not stop. Shackleton keeps them moving, always forward, never down. There is a story they tell later, that they felt a 4th presence with them. Unseen but undeniable, a companion in the storm. Shackleton calls it the 4th man. Crean swears it too. Whether ghost, god, or the echo of desperation, it walks beside them until they stagger down toward Stromness Bay. Dawn breaks. A steam whistle blows. Civilization at last in the form of a whaling station. Men stumble out to greet 3 figures who look like they've risen from the grave. Bearded, blackened, clothes in rags, eyes sunken but alive. Shackleton asks for help. They stare, recognizing the name, not believing the sight. The Endurance expedition is no longer lost. Rescue is within reach. But 22 men still wait on Elephant Island, staring at the horizon, counting the days. And Shackleton knows the story is not finished until every one of them is pulled from the edge. Stromness is a jarring sight after 17 months of ice. Smoke from the chimneys, the smell of whale oil, the clang of iron against iron, it all feels unreal to Shackleton, Worsley and Crean as they stumble into the station yard. Hardened Norwegian whalers stop their work, staring in silence at 3 figures who look like wreckage brought in by the tide. Shackleton steps forward, his beard matted, clothes in tatters, but his voice steady. "My name is Shackleton. My ship was the Endurance. Can you help me?" The whaling manager, Thoralf Sørle, recognizes him. Shock floods his face. These men were supposed to be dead. Instead, they are standing before him, emaciated and frostbitten, demanding ships, not sympathy. Coffee is poured, food is offered, but Shackleton eats little. He is already planning the rescue. 22 men still sit on Elephant Island, waiting for his return, and every hour counts. The first task is to recover McNish, Vincent, and McCarthy from King Haakon Bay. A small vessel is dispatched, and within days the 3 are brought to Stromness. Shackleton greets McNish with warmth despite their clashes. He knows the carpenter's work on the James Caird saved them. But there is no time to mend pride or dwell on grudges. The focus is clear. Get to Elephant Island, the problem is ships. The Southern Ocean laughs at small vessels. Shackleton tries with what he can borrow. First attempt the Southern Sky, an old whaler. Ice bars the way. Second attempt. The Instituto de Pesca No. 1 lent by the Uruguayan government. Again the pack forces them back. Third attempt. The Emma, a sealer reinforced by Chileans. Storms drive them off course, nearly wreck the ship, and they limp back in defeat. 3 times hope has risen, and 3 times the sea has slammed the door in their faces. Meanwhile, on Elephant Island, Frank Wild holds the line. Every morning he orders the men to be ready, telling them, "Pack up your things, boys. The boss may come today." It is half ritual, half defiance against despair. Their shelter, boats turned upside down, canvas weighted with rocks, leaks constantly. They huddle together in sodden sleeping bags, gnaw on seal meat, boil bones for soup. Scurvy creeps in. Frostbite blackens toes. Percy Blackborough, the stowaway, loses his entirely. Yet they endure, clinging to Wild's conviction that Shackleton will return. August 30th, 1916. The 4th attempt. Shackleton has secured the Yelcho, a Chilean steamer commanded by Captain Luis Pardo. It is small, underpowered, ill-suited for ice, but it has one advantage the others lacked: urgency. Shackleton insists, Pardo agrees, and the gamble is made. Fog lifts as the Yelcho nears Elephant Island. Shackleton stands on the bow, binoculars fixed on the beach. A cluster of figures appears, waving frantically. He counts 1, 2, 3, 22, all alive. Against every law of chance, not one man has been lost. Shackleton lowers into a boat, rows ashore, and clasps Wild's hand. No speeches, no theatrics, just relief. The impossible has been done. The men are pulled aboard, gaunt, filthy, clothes in rags, but grinning through broken teeth. Their ordeal has lasted 128 days on that barren rock, 17 months since leaving South Georgia. As the Yelcho turns north, Elephant Island fades into mist. They never look back. Shackleton has kept his promise. Not one man left behind. Survival is victory, but the expedition is not yet history. It must collide with a world that has changed beyond recognition. Ahead lies Chile, then England, and the shadow of the Great War. Their story of endurance will have to fight to be heard. Punta Arenas, Chile, August 1916. The docks are alive with cheering crowds as the Yelcho limps into port, its deck lined with ghosts who refuse to die. Shackleton's men, gaunt, frostbitten, clothes in tatters, stare wide-eyed at a world of color and noise after 17 months of monochrome ice. They are feted as heroes, embraced by Chilean families, handed fresh bread, fruit, wine. Some weep at the taste of sugar. Others flinch at their own reflections in mirrors, startled by faces hollowed by hunger and hardship. Shackleton is already restless. Even as doctors tend to frostbite and townsfolk celebrate their survival, he wires London, "All well." The words are terse, understated, almost absurd in their simplicity. But his focus has shifted. The Ross Sea Party, the men on the Aurora laying depots on the opposite side of Antarctica, are still stranded, 3 already dead. He cannot let them be forgotten. Plans for their rescue consume him, even as his own crew begins to scatter. For the 28 survivors of the Endurance, re-entry into civilization is surreal. Some embrace it with gusto. Tom Crean, the towering Irishman, tells stories in taverns, his humor undimmed, his pint hand steady. Frank Hurley guards his negatives like gold, developing visions of shattered ships and haunted ice that will shock audiences back home. The stowaway, Percy Blackborough, limps with frostbitten feet, but jokes that he earned his berth after all. Others are quieter, their eyes shadowed by memories of groaning ice and endless night. But the world they rejoin is unrecognizable. Europe is drowning in the Great War. The Somme has swallowed tens of thousands. Newspapers print Shackleton's tale, but the headlines belong to trenches, not glaciers. Their survival, miraculous as it is, becomes a footnote in a world consumed by death on an industrial scale. Shackleton feels the sting of irrelevance, though he masks it with lectures and plans. By December 1916, he is in New Zealand, organizing the Aurora's rescue. Those men who endured their own hell of scurvy, starvation, and loss are finally brought back, gaunt but alive, their ordeal overshadowed by the Endurance saga. Shackleton shoulders the burden quietly, aware that his great expedition has failed in purpose, but triumphed in survival. For his men, life after ice is a study in divergence. Some enlist, trading Antarctic frost for trench mud. Others retreat to quieter lives. Frank Wild remains Shackleton's steadfast deputy. Tom Crean opens a pub in Ireland, christened the South Pole Inn, where locals gather to hear his tales. Hurley pursues fame through photography and film, his images of ice cathedrals and gaunt faces becoming the expedition's immortal legacy. Harry McNish, the carpenter whose skill saved them, grows bitter, feeling underappreciated, his resentment simmering until death. Yet the bond remains. Like soldiers bound by the memory of shared trenches, the men of the Endurance never fully leave each other. Letters are exchanged, occasional reunions are held. Their conversations circle back to the same images: the groan of ice under pressure, the shimmer of auroras, the sound of Shackleton's voice in the storm, and Shackleton himself. Restless, always restless, he lectures to packed halls in London and New York, his charisma undimmed. Hurley slides silencing audiences with proof that the unbelievable was real. He writes south, his account of the expedition plain and restrained, letting the facts carry their own weight. Critics marvel at the understatement. The story is too wild to need embellishment, but the ice still calls him. Even as the war rages, he dreams of returning south, chasing the same blank spaces that nearly killed him. He is a man built for crisis, not calm. And though his men scatter across a world on fire, their survival tale is beginning to take root, not as conquest, but as testament that sometimes endurance itself is the greatest victory. Shackleton never stopped moving. The war years pulled him into service, lectures for morale, propaganda tours, brief stints of naval duty, but peace never settled on him. By 1921, restless as ever, he gathered another crew, bought another ship and aimed again at the south. This time the goal was vague: oceanography, mapping, scientific work. But in truth, Shackleton was chasing the same ghost he'd chased all his life: the white silence at the end of the world. The ship was the Quest, smaller than the Endurance, braced with hope more than steel. Frank Wild, the loyal deputy, was there again, steady as a keel. So were several other veterans, men who had starved with him, frozen with him, trusted him in moments when trust was the only currency left. They followed him once more because Shackleton was Shackleton, and when he called, you went. But the years had caught up. The man who had once hauled sledges across glaciers now carried weight in his chest. In January 1922, the Quest lay at anchor in South Georgia, that island of whalers and mountains where the Great Escape had begun 6 years earlier. Shackleton complained of pain, shrugged it off, kept working. On the morning of January 5th, he collapsed in his cabin, a heart attack. 47 years old. The boss was gone. He was buried there in Grytviken, under a simple headstone facing the sea. Wild grief carved deep into him, carried out Shackleton's widow's request: bury him in South Georgia, where he belongs. The men gathered around the grave, snow falling, remembering not the speeches or plans, but the quiet moments: Shackleton's calm when the ship groaned, his banter on the floe, the way his eyes seemed to command the horizon itself. The expedition ended, but the legend didn't. Over the decades, Shackleton's story hardened into something more than exploration. Business schools dissected his leadership, how he rationed hope, how he listened more than he spoke, how he treated morale as a survival tool. Astronauts studied him as a model for isolation. Crisis managers quoted him, "Difficulties are just things to overcome, after all." Artifacts resurfaced. Hurley's photographs, once nearly lost on the ice, became icons of endurance. Shackleton's diary lines were read like scripture. Expeditions retraced his path, some with GPS and Gore-Tex, others in replicas of the James Caird. In 2022, a century after his death, the Endurance herself was found on the seabed, astonishingly intact, her nameplate still visible, as if waiting for the men to return. But perhaps the truest legacy is simpler. 28 men went into the teeth of the Weddell Sea, and 28 men came back. Shackleton's great crossing never happened. His flag never spanned Antarctica. Yet survival, unity, and return became their triumph. In a world obsessed with conquest, Shackleton showed that endurance could be victory enough. His story closes where it began, among the glaciers of South Georgia, mountains sharp against the sky, waves hammering the coast. The grave looks out over the same sea that once tried to kill him. The motto etched into memory: "By endurance we conquer," and the truth behind it: the plan failed. The men did not. The story of Shackleton and the Endurance didn't end with the grave at Grytviken. It rippled outward, refracted through memory, scholarship, and myth. What began as a failed expedition slowly transformed into one of history's purest studies in survival and leadership. In the years that followed, each man carried a fragment of the saga. Frank Wild, Shackleton's shadow and steady hand, tried to lead his own expeditions but never escaped his mentor's long shadow. He died in South Africa, ashes later laid beside Shackleton's grave, as if the two were destined never to be parted. Tom Crean, indestructible Irishman, returned to County Kerry and opened a pub called the South Pole Inn. Patrons drank stout while listening to stories of a man who once trudged across a continent with a smile. Frank Hurley's photographs, shards of glass plates carried off the ice at unimaginable risk, became immortal, projecting images of ship and men locked in crystalline cathedrals that still stun audiences today. Others slipped back into anonymity. Some enlisted in the Great War straight from rescue and were lost in Flanders mud after surviving Antarctic ice. Some lived long, ordinary lives, haunted quietly by memories of groaning timbers and the slow drift north on breaking floes. Their names were scattered across obituaries and family trees, but together they remained part of something larger than any of them could claim alone. Shackleton's legend, meanwhile, grew. In the 20th century, he was studied not for conquest but for character. Unlike Amundsen or Scott, he did not plant a flag or die in the attempt. His genius was keeping men alive when everything collapsed. His name began appearing in business schools, military academies, and even NASA briefings as case studies in crisis management. His techniques, ruthless optimism, endless small routines, balancing discipline with humor, were lifted from polar ice and dropped into boardrooms and space capsules. Artifacts of the expedition became relics. Hurley's photographs, with their surreal lighting and stark contrasts, entered museums. Shackleton's diaries, terse but steady, were published and quoted as testaments to resolve. The James Caird itself, the little boat that dared the Southern Ocean, was preserved at Dulwich College in London, a shrine to improbable success. The tale never stopped inspiring retellings. Authors, playwrights, and filmmakers mined it for drama. Teachers told it to restless students as proof that discipline and faith could bend reality. Climbers, sailors, and explorers retraced routes, measuring their modern gear against the iron will of men armed with seal meat and a banjo. In 2022, exactly a century after Shackleton's death, searchers located the wreck of the Endurance on the seafloor of the Weddell Sea, preserved in black water, her nameplate gleaming as if untouched by time. It was more than discovery, it was resurrection. The legacy distills into a paradox. Shackleton's expedition failed its stated aim, yet its survival made it immortal. No crossing of Antarctica, no glory of flags or maps completed. Instead, a deeper triumph, the proof that leadership, loyalty, and the refusal to yield can wrest life from an indifferent void. The motto carved into the family crest still stands: by endurance we conquer. Shackleton never conquered the ice, but he conquered despair. And in the end, that conquest mattered more than any line drawn across a blank continent. The story closes not with conquest, but with endurance itself, the quiet, stubborn victory of men who refuse to die.